It's strange seeing
Do what?
it's weird looking at the lag between our cell phones.
Hmm.
How many folks we got to?
I'll see on Eventbrite, but and when I'm looking at YouTube right now. Um, to be honest with you, I'm not tech savvy. I just set this up. If it's recorded, I will then follow up afterwards. I'll get some of your information and put in that email, and it's there for everyone to kind of see a review. So. And plus, I do these. I working with holistic people. They love kind of interacting in person. That's why I do more in person events. But unfortunately, with everything going on, you know, so.
How's working going for you?
It's been stressful. We actually had a meeting with our the vice president, like of all of Wellstar, meet with just our unit because they said we expect y'all to work more during a pandemic, but we pushed y'all a little too much, and so she wants to kind of work on some solutions, I guess, to kind of amp down and de-stress and work on all the kind of problems. But other than that, I mean, I've been doing really good during this time. I've kind of looked at it as a new opportunity, and just to kind of sit around and watch news and veg out and eat, and. How about you?
So what department are you in Wellstar are you in? You said that you've been working less, not more?
I'm in the ICU. Well, I'm actually working the same hours now. I'm working in the ICU. I have a pending transfer to urgent care float pool, so that's pending, and it just keeps getting pushed off and pushed off as they need more staff. Yep, so we're live, but so it's been crazy, and in fact, our unit right now is the unofficial COVID unit. They call it Little Wuhan in some place of the hospital, but it's going.
So you're doing plenty of self-care?
Yeah, yes, I've been gardening a lot. I actually moved into a new place, so that's like really great. It gives me an opportunity to kind of just take my mind off things. I'm gardening, doing a lot of projects around the house, just stuff like that. And that kind of broke my meditation practice because I'm just doing versus sitting. I'm always having to think about, oh, this has to be done. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of that kind of stuff.
Is that where you're going right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm ready to get started whenever you are. So I'm just going to say something.
Right. Are we going to be able to see other folks on the call, or should be?
Yeah, I can't. I'm going through the whatchamacallit, dashboard. I can't really find it. I can only kind of get to the chat feature. So if anyone pops in throughout the webinar, then I'll see. If not, like I said, it's recorded, so they'll see that part of it, and then we can just post-up, send that out.
If folks could ask me questions, because I can talk about whatever all day long, but it might not have any bearing as to what people actually want to hear. So.
All right. Okay. Then I'll just quickly go through these questions, and then we'll see if anyone's in. I sent an email out last time. It's funny. All my events that I don't think are going to do well, everyone shows up to. All my events, I'm like, yeah, no one's not really. Or like my last one, I was just going to do a talking circle conference. Everyone just kind of opens up. Tons of people wanted to call in and do it. So, we'll see. But this is kind of new for me, just doing the webinar for the group.
Yeah.
So we can certainly wait a few more minutes if that works for you.
Sure. I really want to make it more interactive than just me ranting about something.
No. I wanted to kind of bring a beginner base level of knowledge. If anyone's never tried herbal medicine, if anyone, because I get people from massage, nursing, social work, doctors, chiropractic. I've hosted an event on chiropractic, and I actually had like um, an advertising coordinator or something from a law firm. So she wanted to learn more about what she could do with chiropractic and pull that in with her law firm. I thought that was pretty interesting. I never thought that would reach that kind of person. I'm trying to just kind of bring a beginner knowledge, and then like I said, I'll bring in a lot of those questions on COVID. I'm sure that's on a lot of people's mind, but.
Yeah, I've had a lot of really interesting conversations with IT team about a lot of facets of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I could certainly talk about that, but I don't want to dominate the conversation. Especially people who learn about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But chances are, on paper, that probably the conversations that I'm having are really different from what they're hearing mainstream media or conventional medicine.
Mm-hmm. And that's what people are looking for. And that's some of my questions, and what I want to get at is what can people do while they're stuck at home. And the best thing that I heard, I was building up my meditation practice, and I had that good solid foundation going to this. So I think that helped me. And then one of my mentors, or I was listening to a webinar or podcast or something that said, look at this. Oh, it's for triathlon. So how can you adjust your triathlon training while you don't have all these resources, can't go to a pool, do all this. And they said, just look at this as an opportunity for growth, opportunity to change something, opportunity to find something new, opportunity to try that stretching routine or whatever it is that you always put on the back burner. And so I thought that was very interesting. So that's kind of what I want it to be, is people to find, maybe that's something new I can try, while I'm stuck at home, I can find more information about it, because we'll always get caught up in what we're used to. So we grew up in this West world, always going to a pill to fix our pain or this symptom, then we just go to that reflexively. So we can maybe, learn about something new while we have this time. We're quarantine and whatnot, so that's the experience I want people to have.
There's a lot to say about all these things, but one general nice mindset thing that you mentioned was taking any obstacle, or virus, or traffic on the way home, and looking as that as an opportunity that rather than an obstacle, instead of being upset that you're not home, that you're in a car, that you're not somewhere else, you could take opportunity to acknowledge what is and where you are, and say, wow, I have all this time to work on my breathing technique, or my meditation, or to book on tape, and this is awesome. I'm exactly where I want to be right now. Like there's signs on the side of the road that say, if you live here and you're home by now, so there's things that are presumably on your way to home work. And as bad as traffic is, it's kind of a mindset thing. If you lived here, as in if you lived in the present moment, you would be home by now.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
It's a cognitive restructuring thing.
Mm-hmm. Very true. All right. I can't seem to get into the dashboard to see where everyone is. I just can get to the chat. But if anything pops up, then I'll certainly we'll stop in the middle, and then we'll stop at the end and ask you some questions. I'm just going to get started, say something about the chapter, a few things, and then we'll get started. How's that sound?
Yeah. Cool.
All right. So my name is.
I can do a little tour of the clinic.
That works for me. That's certainly great, especially because people may not be able to get out. If they're immunocompromised, they may not feel comfortable getting around people, or they might, that's just kind of ease them into what a visit is. So that's great. All right. So my name is Matthew. I'm the chapter leader of the North Georgia chapter of the American Holistic Nurses Association. I'm an ICU nurse, as we've kind of gone over, working, with COVID patients, ECMO patients, things like that. And I really started this chapter just to focus strict on burnout. If someone just has an hour during our meeting to decompress, that's the goal of what we're trying to do here, and also kind of connect and learn from different professions. However, during these times right now, we're trying to adapt as we can go and learn some things. So, like I said, this is an opportunity of growth for all of us. So that's why we're sitting here with Oxford Sierra, an herbalist in the Atlanta area. He also practices acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, Oriental medicine, in his new clinic in, is it Sandy Springs, if I'm correct? Yep. All right. So he just moved. So he's going to tell us a little bit about who he is and what he does at his clinic.
Yeah. So I thought I'd start with a little, as I'm introducing myself, I will give a little bit of tour clinic, because I think it's a really cool space. Unfortunately, COVID hit just as we moved in, so it's a beautiful space that very few people are seeing. So if this isn't too jittery on the camera, I will try to give you guys a little look around. This is from the front entrance, so this is what you would see if you walked in. And if you look to your left as you walked in, you would see a big, tall bookshelf with a lot of herbs, and there's going to be about 100 more jars and herbs. Oh, thank you so much.
I'm going to assist you.
Yes, Whitney is going to help me hold the laptop. And then, I'm a big fan of music, so I've got some musical stuff here. I have one of my patients make that thing, which is, she used to work for Cirque du Soleil, and making the props for those. And so she made me a lamp out of some old musical instruments. We've got mostly infusible mostly Western, some Chinese herbs here. By infusible, I mean, you guys, when you hear infusion, you think, running an IV. When we say infusion for the last several thousand years, we think putting something in water and letting it steep, be it in a cold infusion, for a day, or a hot infusion for 5 minutes, like you would put mint leaves in hot water, and all of a sudden you have mint tea. So these are mostly things that you can infuse in water. Some of these things you can eat, like, we've got a bunch of goji berries in here, which are kind of yummy. You see them in granola mixes. We've got, this is kind of a cool one, ginseng leaf, which is local. We've got, cinnamon, which, most of these smell or taste fairly good, which in herbal medicine is not all that common. So these are all the things that you wouldn't complain too much about having, ginseng or lavender or a little sage or something in your tea. But trust me, that's not, it gets worse, if you will, as far as taste goes. But, who said medicine was supposed to taste good, right? So, anyhow, so this is the wall of mostly Chinese herbs.
Western.
Mostly Western herbs. We have also bottles and stuff, because I compound a lot of stuff. By compound, I mean I'll mix a little of this herb, that herb, and that powder, and I'll make someone a custom blend of those things for drinking as a tea, which I try to make those taste good. The tinctures, however, which are these guys over here.
Can you still see?
Yeah, I think so. These are from A to Z. So if you look up from there, that's A. And so A, we have, aconite, which I just happened to grab the one thing that could theoretically kill you.
Don't pick up the ones with the
generally speaking, they're very safe. And this one actually, if it was a raw, unprocessed form, it is quite deadly, although still medicinal. It's just a matter of dose, right? Because, the poison is in the dose. So broccoli is poisonous, it's just a matter of how much. Versus a tiny bit of this is poisonous, but half of that amount is medicinal. So when it's cooked and processed like this is, it's not going to hurt you. But when it's raw, actually even touching it, there's some funny stories, by the way. Even touching this herb is highly, highly toxic. So from A, aconite, down to Z, which is Zinziber. And if anyone I could ask, do you know what Zinziber is?
I have no clue.
It's ginger. It's a Latin name, so it's organized by Latin binomial names.
Oh, that's great. I just started growing ginger. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, most of the Chinese herbal formulas have a little ginger in there, and it's usually fresh. This is the tinctured form, so it's an alcohol. These over here, I make topicals as well, so these are oils. There's some essential oils here. There's some infused oils here. So I'll make a lotion for a scar. I'll make a vaginal or rectal suppository. I'll use some of these essential oils to compound in a 2 or 3% for a nebulizer mix to put medicine directly into the lungs. So I'll compound all kinds of stuff. What else? And I'll show you the decoction machines. Whitney doesn't want me to go back there because it's messy, but I think it's pretty cool. So these guys are for the herbal making that is doesn't taste so good. So I'll throw 20 grams of Eleuthero, 10 grams of Dongwei or whatever. They're formulas that are typically anywhere from 8 to 15 ingredients, and they are decocted. By that, decocting means that you boil it in here for a good 2 hours, and then I put them in this packaging machine, and you get a little pouch of decocted herbs that you can take home, and I'll make a 10-day or a 15-day supply. And then people come back in to see me. I'll check their pulse, I'll look at their tongue, I might run some blood work, see what's going on, and then adjust their diet, lifestyle, and herbal formulas according to what's going on. So that could be a decoction, that could be a tincture, that could be a topical, that could be a nebulizer mix, a suppository, a supplement, or often, especially with the more severe patients, which is most of my patient base, cancer, autoimmune, it's going to be a combination of at least 2 or 3, sometimes 4 of those things. So then that's kind of what I do all day long. We do fun little projects here sometimes too, because hey, we've got all these herbs to play with. Right now, one of our patients is a local organic farmer. So we get all kinds of cool farms. So we're making some sauerkraut here, which is a nice source of B12 and all kinds of yummy things to help digestion. So we're making some homemade sauerkraut there. I make all kinds of stuff. So that's kind of one of the things that makes us kind of special, is that we compound a lot of things and compound it and I don't make 100 or 1,000 units of a product. I make enough for one person for about a week, and then, or sometimes 2 or sometimes 3, but usually not more than that. And then I'll check back in with them to see what's going on. Like I said, their pulse, their signs and symptoms. Occasionally run stool, urine, saliva, blood, whatever, to see what's going on, and then set goals, do something, change diet, lifestyle, herbs, intervention, test again a month or 3 later, see where we're at. What else? We're making everyone take their shoes off here at the clinic because we're taking a lot of hygiene. They got to come in, don't touch anything, take your shoes off, go directly to the bathroom, wash hands, and then we can talk. We've got my treatment room over here. So, I'll have acupuncture session. I've got a biomat here, which is a far infrared emitting device. I've also got an ozone machine here, which is kind of cool.
That one wasn't working.
So we'll do either ozone, I don't do IV ozone, but ozone in different places as a treatment option as well. Play some nice music. People typically find it very relaxing in here. It's also got a nice high ceiling. It's a nice, soothing, calm place. I've got some cork floor down here at the bottom. We made sure that all of the materials made at the clinic had no outgassing paint or floors or carpet. Even the plywood I had to special order to make sure that it didn't outgas any aldehydes, because we're all sensitive and that stuff is toxic for everyone, but the patient base that I typically work with is already, sick. So, and I sometimes measure the aldehydes and the glyphosate and the, perchlorate and all these things in their urine. So I didn't want my own clinic to be a source of these things, because it would be pretty hypocritical of me to tell people to stop being exposed to this stuff when the very visit to my clinic exposed them to volatile organic solvents from the paint. So what else? That's about it. That's a little tour and hopefully a nice little intro as to what I do, which is both a combination of traditional medicine, and by traditional I mean things that have been around for thousands of years and written about, as well as some functional medicine, which has been around for a lot less time, which involves some analytical lab work. So kind of the best of both worlds, I like to say.
That's great, Oscar. So, going by, you clearly are very knowledgeable. You picked up some of those jars, named it right off. I don't think I saw a label on some of those herbs when you first picked them up, so that you're very knowledgeable. And that goes back to some of the questions that I have. What are some of the benefits of going to an herbal therapist, or a traditional Chinese medicine or herbalist or whoever, someone very knowledgeable and skilled, versus just kind of picking up some of the herbs we see, like ginseng and things like that, and ginger and things we kind of just see in blends or granola bars, or mushrooms, a mushroom mix we might see at the health food store. So just kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I would, there are definitely, herbal medicine is a profession, and we have our own, regulating bodies and guidelines for ethics and standards and so forth. But it's hard to say, who is not an herbalist? Who doesn't put a little mint, in their lemonade, or some fresh thyme on, on their dinner, or some garlic in their mashed potatoes, right? So, and just because someone isn't licensed like me, I'm licensed as an acupuncture, and there's a national registered herbalist. There's some grandma out there that has been, growing and using herbs for, 80 years. Does that mean that she doesn't know what she's doing because she isn't licensed, or, hasn't gotten the professional designation by the American Herbalist Guild? No, of course not. So, and the distinction between food and herbs is a very gray line. It's a spectrum. So on the one hand, you've got, a yam, right, which could be dinner, yet could also be, something that, when refined to the nth degree, could function as an exogenous hormone that's going to potentially change a menstrual cycle, and at extremely low doses. So, right, progesterone and estrogen, these hormones at extraordinarily low dosages make a huge difference. So, it's a spectrum. So, it's fun, to answer your question. I love it because it's fun. And why would someone benefit? One of the big things that kind of ties into this COVID situation that we've got right now is just the mode of thinking. I mean, yes, someone could argue, well, at least an herbalist isn't going to use anything toxic. And it just so happened that the very first thing I picked up actually was potentially toxic in the right form. But other than, one or two extremely rare exceptions, which most people would not be able to get their hands on, I still have to have license to order that one. And even that form, like I said, is the non-toxic cooked form, because raw it's very dangerous, but cooked it's fine. But for the most part, it would, even if we tried to do harm, we would be hard pressed to do harm. The worst thing that I can do as a professional, and I've done it, is make someone vomit or giving them diarrhea. So, after seeing thousands of patient cases over the last, 11 years, I feel fairly good, and I've definitely messed up. And the times that I have given someone diarrhea or made them throw up, I've of course learned from it, and those are the lessons that tend to stick with you. But compared to a doctor, or the third leading cause of death in the country, which is doctors and medical errors, it's way less bad. So not only can it be less bad, but it actually tends to be good for you in general. So, drinking these teas on a daily basis, not because you're sick, but just because you like tea is probably going to do a lot more for your immune system and your nervous system than drinking just water or coffee. So even without trying, these things, generally speaking, we're not trying to address or treat a disease. These things are just generally good to increase function. But the main thing I wanted to say in this regards, or this pertains especially to the atmosphere right now with COVID, is that the change of thinking. So rather than one based entirely on pathogen theory, or let's treat the cancer or the infection or the virus or the broken bone, which is important to treat all those things, there is the flip side of it, which is the terrain. So pretty much every traditional medicine system in the world, be it traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic or Western herbal medicine, that's traditional, or even Appalachian folk medicine, has an emphasis on not just the pathogen or disease, but it has an emphasis on the person and their environment. And even zooming out a little bit more, the context of their relationship to others, the world, their deities or deity, and their society. So we look at things from a much bigger lens, not to say that it's impossible for us to treat an infection or a bone break or whatever. And of course, if you get hit by a truck and break bones, don't call me, go to the emergency room. But after you're in the emergency room, there's absolutely some things that we can do to help recovery and decrease the chance of an infection and all kinds of cool stuff. And some of it will taste good and some of it will taste god-awful. But and at the worst thing is it doesn't work. It typically does, and you can measure it, which is what I do, in objective as well as subjective ways. But this terrain theory, which was coined by a French guy in the 1800s, Antoine Béchamp, is interesting. Of course, it's been around long since. This white guy supposedly invented it. Like, America wasn't discovered by a white guy. It was just, they get credit for it. But whatever. It's been around for eons, and the premise is that, asking the question, what is it about the environment that allowed this pathogen or disease to happen, and is there a way that we can address the environment? Because even in the Bible it has references to putting seeds on the rocks versus putting seeds on the fresh earth where it's fertile. So the question is, are you creating an environment that is rich for inflammation, oxidation, and diseases like cancer and viruses and other bacteria? Are there ways to measure these things using objective means, like looking at vitamin D levels, looking at zinc levels, looking at magnesium levels, looking at secretory IgA, looking at some of these antibodies, looking at 8-OHTG as a marker of oxidation? Yes. So the answer is yes. There are ways to both measure how well your system is working, and there are ways to measure, as Western conventional medicine gets stuck on and hyperfixated on, is ways to measure how it's not working. So, we're not in the business in natural medicine of anti-anything, antimicrobial, antioxidant, antiviral. We're in the business of pro. So, how can we make an existing system that is supposed to be fending off oxidation, inflammation, infection, and, scurvy? How do we get this to function optimally? And sure, along the way, there's certainly room for botanicals and natural agents that, do fend off specific antigens or pathogens for sure. And there's some pretty decent research on, but the mindset is different. We don't try to just kill stuff or cut stuff off or zap things or whatever. It's always, from 30,000 feet, it's not just what's the pathogen, it's always, what's the environment, what's the total big picture look like. So, I fully acknowledge, as well as most good herbalists, that we're not just trying to replace a pill with an herb. We're trying to look at the big picture, because there's no amount of my acupuncture or my herbs that is going to fix someone's lack of eating healthy or going outside and getting some vitamin D, or not sleeping with their cell phone under their pillow and underneath power lines, and with their Wi-Fi router underneath their bed. So, my herbs don't fix electromagnetic radiation. So you have to ask about that. And most, in the context of conventional Western medicine, even if doctors know or care about these things, which unfortunately most don't know, and I would think that most do care, even if they cared about, what your mattress was or where exactly your bed is situated, if on the other side of the wall there's a refrigerator, which by the way does emit a good bit of this potentially harmful stuff, they're not going to ask, they don't, even if they wanted to, they got what, 7 minutes max. So, it's just damage control, which is great because people get hit by buses, and there absolutely is a time and a place to do damage control. But hopefully we don't get hit by the bus, and we create a terrain and environment that is inconducive for COVID-19 and cancer at the same time. And it's the same kind of things that create this terrain, and you can measure these things. So rather than just throw your hands up and sequester yourself in your home and cover yourself with PPEs head to toe, which is entirely possible, and you should be doing that if you're in the ICU. How long is that going to last for everyone, right? At some point, what about, COVID-20 and 21 and 22? We're just going to wait for a vaccine that is hopefully effective and maybe for last year's virus rather than next year's. So the strategy, I'm not disagreeing with the hygiene and conventional medicine. I'm just saying that that's not really treating the problem, which is addressing the terrain. And conventional medicine, as well-intentioned as they are with the amazing technology that is around, absolutely falls flat on not using it to test something that is just a no-brainer, which is, what kind of soil are you using to plant your strawberry bushes, right? If you just know what kind of soil they like and what kind of soil the weeds don't like, then, farmers know about this. This isn't rocket science. So anyway, like I said, I could ramble all night long, but you guys have more questions, hopefully.
No problem. You got on many good points. It's traditional. It's been used, herbal therapy's been used for thousands of years in many different cultures. And so it's, again, you're looking at all those different elements that, lead us to dis-ease, not dysfunction. I get this question all the time, why should I go to a chiropractor or physical therapist or whatever, or even a doctor of osteopath? They all do manipulation therapy. They all just focus on a different point as to why you can't move. And so I think you hit on a good point. Everyone has their different theory as to why something's not working. And, if I'm a surgeon, I only am going to perform surgery. I think that your brain tumor needs to be cut out. If I'm an oncologist, I think you need chemo. If I'm a nutritionist, I think you need good nutritional support. So everyone works with what they know, but take us back to what you kind of know as in traditional Chinese medicine. What are some of the key ideas? I know everyone has heard like yin and yang and feng shui and all these different things. They're nebulous words to us, but just try to bring some of those concepts that you may use. I know you use a blended concept of using labs and things, to talk about how you would assess a patient using those means as well.
Yeah, and the things that you mentioned, the things that DOs and nutritionists and even folks that look at genetics and single nucleotide polymorphisms and how those impact health, and environmental scientists that look at, your exposure to air quality, water quality, food toxins, pesticides, herbicides, outgassing of chairs and carpets and paint. Everyone has their own expertise and viewpoint, but the nice thing about the majority of us in the holistic healthcare community is that we have this understanding that we're not mutually exclusively right. It's not that my patients don't need a chiropractic adjustment or that they don't need to do some hypnosis. These are folks that really get it, understand that the goal is the same. The pathway to the top of the mountain might just be a different one, but at the end of the day, all of us are looking at the big picture, that the person, their constitution, their environment, and their condition first and foremost. So we take our own strategy for it, but that doesn't mean that someone else is wrong necessarily. I think it's only wrong when someone doesn't acknowledge the rest of the picture. So, they don't have to address it, but they need to at least acknowledge that, people are more than just a sum total of an elbow plus a wrist plus a humerus plus a radius and an ulmus, right? That is technically an arm, but that's, why did the person break their arm, and what kind of, maybe their sex life needs to be addressed because they broke their arm because they were engaging in some super weird, sexy, kinky thing that is cool, but maybe do it with this type of other sling instead of that one. And you really just, I'm making a joke, but I'm being serious about the fact that just you have to dig. You have to really ask about their environment, their social being, and their physical being. And yes, like you said, there are some ways to assess some of these things objectively via laboratory analysis. I run what I consider a basic panel for me on all of my patients, which is a vitamin D, uric acid, CRP, C-reactive protein, omega-3 profile to see how many of the good oils they have. Even though people are often taking fish oil, it's usually not enough to get their levels where they ought to be, or they're taking it and not digesting it, or they're taking it, digesting it, and not absorbing it. So, either they're lying about taking the fish oil, or they're not taking enough, or they're just not getting what they ought to be getting. So these are just lines of inquiry, right? So I don't do the testing to make an absolute truth. I do the testing to guide me down a line of inquiry. So the testing is a beginning, not an end, right? Sure, I'd like to help rule things out, but as you probably know as a clinician, the tests often raise more questions than they answer, and that's okay. Like, people are complex things, and we're here to ask the questions. So I propose that one of the things that makes us as holistic practitioners different is that we're not so much fixated on answering the issue as much as we are fixated on making sure that the questions are addressed and answered, even if not by us. I'm not a pastor or a shaman or a rabbi, and so but I yet know that the spiritual component is a huge piece, and I want to make sure that someone has that covered by some form or fashion that they're comfortable with. So yes, it's part of what we ask. The basic blood work panel, to finish where I was going, vitamin D, uric acid, CRP. I measure MTHFR, the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene, SNPs, ApoE, factor V, fibrinogen, which ties into this COVID thing. I think this whole hypercoagulability thing that seems to be going on even in younger people, which is not surprising given some of the pathophysiology of this thing, and I think it largely has to do with the oxidative status of endothelial tissue, lack of things that control oxidation, as well as magnesium. But I measure this in all of my patients. So fibrinogen, and no matter how young they are, a lot of my patients are cancer patients, and as you probably know, the clotting risk, if you've ever had cancer in your life, is really high. And that's the second leading cause of death in cancer are clots. And as you probably know also, these are a lot easier to prevent than to treat. So fibrinogen is pretty easy to measure, and it's a pretty good marker that someone is heading in that direction. So what else do I measure? Zinc, magnesium, the megas I mentioned, D, fibrinogen, an advanced lipid profile that doesn't just tell us how much cholesterol or LDL and HDL, but the size and density and stickiness, which I think is far more than simply looking at total numbers. And then I assess their pulse, which is a very low-tech way that gives me immediate results as to not just how many beats per minute, but how strong, fast, thin, thick, or wide, or irregular, or regularly irregular, or irregularly irregular, or whatever it is. It gives me a very good immediate idea, again, not an absolute, but a line of inquiry. So I can usually tell that someone has back pain given just their pulse, or has neck pain given just their pulse, or gets hot and sweaty at night given just their pulse, which I make it a point to never ask anyone any questions or look at their patient forms before they come to see me, because I like to keep honing my acumen of simply shutting up, turning my mind off, and feeling what is going on, rather than knowing the answer before someone opens their mouth. So even though they may have come to me for, ankle pain, I like to check their pulse and then say, hey, do you get hot and sweaty at night? And they'll usually say, yeah, actually. How did you know that? And I say, your pulse told me. And then that often kind of builds a good sense of trust and awe, which I would have awe. I still have awe, all the time when I do this stuff. And it's amazing that given, I literally turn their patient forms upside down, and I tell them, do not tell me anything just yet. I want to hear everything. I want to hear your whole story, but please let me just do this real quick. It also just gives them a chance to sit down, relax, have a sip of tea, not say anything. Normally Atlanta traffic is a real bugger. So they come in here for the first time kind of stressed out to, where's the parking lot and where's the building? Am I on time? I'm running, a little late, and they're all stressed out. It gives them just a few minutes to just chill out, which, who doesn't need? You have a practice of meditation, at the very least, it just gives you something to do with your body besides doing stuff. It allows you to just be for a few minutes, which is, as you know, something that all of us needs to practice. So anyway, that's a rundown as to some of the stuff that I do and why I do it.
That's great. I think you hit a good point. Such a granular, y'all target such a granular level, and a lot of holistic fields as well as Eastern medicine. It's that granular level that people are missing, they're yearning for, and patient satisfaction scores show it. They want that connection and their trust with their physician, but 7 minutes can't show it. And let me just use an example to show kind of the difference. A patient walks into their doctor, they have high cholesterol, a high total cholesterol, or a high LDL, low density, or bad cholesterol. Depending on all the other factors, if they have high risk for cardiac disease, they will be put on a statin or blood pressure medicine or diabetes medicine to prevent a heart attack. All this is for a heart attack, one of the top killers in the United States. But you were talking about how you look at all the different types of cholesterol. And so you're targeting how can I balance them so that I can help HDL, high density, with that LDL, because unfortunately with some of the statins, in taking down that LDL, it depletes all your cholesterol, and then you take away that good omega-3 and HDL, and then it just throws it all out of whack because you're just trying to get everything out of control instead of support the body's own system. So
Right.
I think that's very, very great. So you've hit on some of them, some of the side effects, nausea, vomiting, certainly probably when you take it by mouth or whatnot. I've heard about castor oil packs. Those, you can kind of change the route and avoid some side effects. But just in general, what are some of the advantages, disadvantages of herbal therapy? What are common side effects? Or what are some things some people may need to avoid?
Yeah, well, I mentioned the diarrhea and nausea and vomiting as those are probably the most common, but they, generally speaking, they are not common. So if a side effect happens, it's typically loose stool or as bad as diarrhea, gas sometimes, and typically these are self-resolving. So if you do nothing, at least with the decoctions, for example, it is very common for the decocted boiled Chinese medicine formulas to often make someone a little gassy the first couple times they take it. But if they just keep taking that, their system gets used to it, and it's not a big deal. So, I did mention I have given people diarrhea and vomiting, but I can count, in less than 5 fingers the times that's happened over the course of thousands of patient visits. So even though as far as side effects goes, those are the most common, the incidence of those things happening is fairly rare. if you can consider bad tasting herbs as a side effect, I can almost guarantee that will happen. And I just ask people to put on their big girl and big boy pants on and just, chase it with, a smoothie or apple juice or whatever it is, or, tequila, and that'll take the taste out of your mouth and, go on with your life. And like I said, even there, people get over it and even grow to like it, which I've talked to a lot of people that at first didn't like their formula, and then after a few weeks, they actually crave it. So benefits, it typically addresses the root cause. So, and by it, I mean the medicine. And by the medicine, I mean not just the herbs. I mean, the practitioner is the one that addresses the diet, the lifestyle, the environment, the social piece. So, and the herbs are also not exclusive to physical ailments. A lot of these things can definitely help with anxiety, depression, which are, for some strange reason in Western conventional medicine, still considered, exclusively within the realm of not physical but mental diseases. And that's kind of a silly dichotomy, because what isn't the other, right? Like someone that gets hit by a truck, and that's a physical thing, but ask them how their mood is after that, right? And for the next 4 weeks, how great they feel about their spirits of being stuck in a room. Or ask someone, that is depressed because they lost their job, ask them about their back pain and shoulder pain and headaches and fatigue, and those are supposedly physical things, but of course there's not a difference between the physical and emotional and spiritual, and so Chinese medicine really acknowledges and honors that, and one is used to treat the other. So these are not disparate dichotomies here. From a strictly analytical standpoint, you could, on paper, you'd be hard pressed to see the difference between the inflammatory cytokines in someone that is depressed versus someone that smashed their knee with a hammer a couple days ago, right? The same type of inflammatory cytokines are going to be present. So, treat what you see. If you see a person with anxiety and depression have inflammation, treat the inflammation. It just so happens that St. John's wort historically was not used as mood herb. It was used as a battlefield herb for bumps, bruises, contusions, stabbings, bleedings. This literally was used in the battlefield, and before, during, and after. And it is absolutely an anti-inflammatory and vulnerary, as we say. And so is it a surprise, after we found out that, anxiety and depression both have elevated inflammatory markers, that an anti-inflammatory like St. John's wort was effective at helping something like this? Yeah, of course. I mean, it makes perfect sense. So, like I said, there's only a theoretical, ridiculous dichotomy between mind and body. So again, we honor that, and we treat. We don't pretend that difference is significant enough to make a real differentiation.
I think that's very good. That's another benefit to going to a practitioner. We get so caught up in what we're doing or our disease. We feel like we've tried everything, in this modern world with job, work, family stress. It's like we're, trying to keep 10 balls in the air, and we're doing more than what we were expected to do 100 years ago. So to have a practitioner be able to take us out of that stress, the neurosis, the anxiety of even just our condition, but our everyday lives, and to really kind of have that unbiased opinion. You do the pulse check, and that's kind of your litmus test. And to do these different things, to look at us without that bias, and to give us that feedback is, again, another benefit why someone should go to a practitioner, it sounds like. So we talked about some of these side effects, and of course some patients are more vulnerable to them than others. You've mentioned some patients are more vulnerable to those toxins. That's why your clinic doesn't have them. It's kind of a safe space. So just go over some herbal considerations for someone who's elderly, pregnant, children, any of those kind of vulnerable populations.
Well, first of all, let me address the bias thing. I mean, everyone is biased. We try to take as much bias as possible out of, like I mentioned, I tell them, don't tell me what's going on. Don't let me look at your forms. Let me just feel what's going on and report back to you and ask you questions, rather than pretend that I know all of the answers and all of the truths. But anyway, so I'll give you some of the things that I kind of recommend for everyone. You mentioned the elderly and the kind of at-risk population. These are the same recommendations for everyone else, except just more exclamation point on the end of these for these populations. So I made a video not too long ago that's on our YouTube channel, Sierra Botanic and Collaborative Medicine, as well as our Facebook page. I'm trying to post these things because I'm getting the same questions day after day like this. It's like, hey, my mom is 70 years old and this COVID thing is going around, or my sister's pregnant and, she don't want to go out. She's an at-risk population, or, my brother has asthma, COPD, what things can they consider? Well, there's a lot of things, but the top three that are fairly easy, safe, and inexpensive, and number four that don't really require me seeing you. So there's many other things, but they require a little expertise. But a few things that require a no-brainer, right? Get your vitamin D levels above 70. One. Take zinc. Not in the morning on an empty stomach, pretty much any other time, ideally with food. And I like to see serum levels over 100. And take, depending on the brand and the picolinate versus citrate versus, oxide is kind of a waste of time. So, it depends, the dosage depends on what type. But, no one has really ever overdosed on zinc. You can just throw up if you take it on an empty stomach. That's kind of the worst thing that can happen. And it's happened to me. So I know about this. If you take it with a little bit of quinine or Q-tonic, which is a sugar-free version of quinine, tonic water, the quinine serves as what's called an ionophore, which helps the zinc deliver into the cytoplasm of the cell where it's most useful. There are other ones, but that's a pretty cheap, easy one, and it's easy to make yourself a mocktail with. I put some digestive bitters in this stuff and a little lemon juice, and it actually tastes pretty lovely. It tastes like a gin and tonic without the gin. That's not to say that I don't occasionally put gin in there. So vitamin D, zinc, and the third one is some type of adaptogen. Do you know what adaptogens are?
Yes, like I'm actually starting to grow my own mushrooms, so like Reese, Chaga, turkey tail, things that help your body adapt to stress, and they're known to be risk-free. Virtually, you can take them. There's no threshold upper dose, if I'm correct. If that's correct.
That's right. That's a pretty good short definition of an adaptogen. Things that are generally non-toxic and nutritive, things that help you deal with stress, and there are different types of stress. So. There's mental emotional stress, there's temperature stress. There's a lot of experiments where rats were put into really cold water and they looked at cortisol levels, and then they took them out of the water, they measured how long the cortisol took to come down. They gave them ginseng or reishi or rhodiola or other adaptogens, and the ones that had the adaptogens, of course all the rats freaked out when they're in water because they hate water. So there's temperature stress, there is mental emotional stress, there's physical stress, there's inflammatory stress, there's stress that's more specific to the gastrointestinal system. So all of these adaptogens kind of have their own targets and flavors, and but the general rule is that all of them are non-toxic. They help you deal with some type of stress or stresses. They are balancing to a particular, what we call tropho-restorative to a system, and some are more towards the endocrine system, or some are more immune, some are more nervous, some are more gastroenterological. So they all cover at least two, by definition, two of these systems, and they're all what we call bivalent. So reishi, for example, right? This grew in my yard, so it's adaptogenic in that it's nutritive. It's, even if you don't have a disease, it'll help you just deal with the stress of sunshine or your job better. And one of the ways to measure that is cortisol and cortisol recovery levels. And bivalent, it means that it always doesn't always. So, for example, if blood pressure is too low, which is common and dangerous just as much as high blood pressure is. These adaptogens, some of these will help the blood pressure come up to normal. if it is too high, over 140, over 90, the same exact herb and or mushroom at the exact same dose will help that come down. So there's no drug that does that. The drugs always push one way, down or up. And so these things basically, I don't know how. My friend and colleague Robin McGee says, it's the when you ask her how these things work, she's an old farmer country bumpkin out in South Carolina, amazing herbalist. I don't know if she's ever been to college, but my God, she knows how to make amazing medicine, and she knows what works. Don't ask her how it works. She says PFM, which she says, that's the pure fairy magic, or pure F whatever magic. That's how it works. It's the PFM pathway. So, a lot of people, I don't care how it works, just so long as it brings my blood pressure down, man, So, anyway, so those are the three top things, because they're safe, they're effective. The worst thing is they may not protect you against COVID, but hey, there's really good research against them protecting you against diabetes, against high blood pressure, against cancer, against your common cold. So the side effects are all pretty awesome. So there's no reason, I hated that the Fulton County or some county put out a thing recently saying, we want to dispel some of the myths out there about COVID. Garlic doesn't kill COVID, and nasal lavage doesn't kill COVID. And true, there has not been any double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trials on this and COVID, but you know what? There's no randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials on anything, pretty much. So how do you know it doesn't? And can't we just focus on, telling people not to inject bleach because that will actually kill you, versus eating garlic is actually good for your heart, it's good for blood pressure, it does absolutely kill other things that we know of. So yes, it may not do a thing for COVID. It may very well. Who's looked? And the Garlic Council, I don't think, is going to sponsor a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trial with over 1,000 people anytime soon. But I'm going to feel pretty good eating my garlic, because worst thing comes to worst, I just have bad breath. So, it annoys me to no end when, there's the criticism on, natural healthcare practice. And I don't think any of us are making claims that it will kill COVID or kill cancer. But hey, try it, because it's really good for you anyway. And there's a good chance, given the history that we do know about garlic or washing your nose out, that it's just good for you for other reasons. So let's just focus on telling people to avoid the things that are actually bad for them.
I think you hit on a good point. When this all started, as a holistic nurse, my biggest fear, because there are so many unknowns, I could just really focus on certain things, is, it's like snake oil salesmen. We're going to come out and advertise this is going to cure this and cure that. And, in our world, this, we're not really focused on the cure, we're really focused on wellness and healing. Curing and healing are different things. And so I think you've hit on many of them. A lot of these herbs and things, they don't really cure, and they don't promise to a result. They're really just there to support you. And, I've seen people talk about the energetic properties of an herb. So really that's how it affects your mood, your energy field even. And so that goes into more of the kind of the use of it, how to use it. One person uses it this way, it's going to be totally different than how someone else uses it. They're going to derive different benefits, and it just takes that personal aspect. So again, focusing on do no harm. So while we're stuck at home, while some of us have resorted to tons of shopping, and so how can we get these herbs in a safe way? We can't always just go out and start picking plants. Sometimes online, again, unfortunately, some things are advertised that they cure COVID. When they don't cure, they may just help support your health system. Just go on to key elements we should look for on labeling, maybe, for herbs.
Yeah, well, it's illegal for anyone to claim a cure on anything. You can't even say that you can cure dehydration from a legal standpoint by selling water, because that's a medical claim. But, by the same token, I think we're all kind of in agreement that water is a pretty good treatment and cure for dehydration. So these companies are not allowed to make those kind of statements. They are allowed to make function statements that something can increase the function of something else. So, and then as far as herbs go, I love it when people go forage and find their own stuff. Yes, there are some things out there that are not good for you and potentially toxic, and there's not that many things out there that will kill you. That's why it's good to go with an expert that knows their stuff. So, for example, the Mushroom Club of Georgia has forays every month, and it's free and open to the public. You can pay to become a member and get into some of their exclusive member-only forays, and that's pretty cool. I'm a lifetime member. The president of the club is Cornelia Cho, a friend and colleague who's a pediatrician, and the person that is called when someone poisons themselves in the state of Georgia. That's the first call. So yeah, she knows what she's talking about, and the myco mushroom geeks in the club will tell you the difference between any species. They're amazing. I'm okay at identifying field stuff, but I'm not awesome, and I can identify a few things. And some of these things are, like there's nothing else that looks like reishi, right? So a lot of these things are somewhat idiot-proof. The herb side, Herbalista is a great resource. So herbalista.org is my friend and colleague Lorna Amani Brodek, who runs a free clinic where I work in downtown Atlanta. We offer free or donation-only herbal medicine, sometimes chiropractic. I do acupuncture there for the homeless, and we have several volunteers doing massage and Reiki and education stuff about diabetes and HIV and how to eat better and how to use essential oils and blah blah blah. Stuff that low-income people can do, and she has herb walks where she helps you identify these things, and all the proceeds from that go to the free clinic. So it's free if you can't afford it, but if you can, absolutely donate freaking $20 to this thing because it's an awesome cause. And as far as purchasing products that are herbal, I only trust companies where an herbalist is at the helm. I'll give you an example. I probably have a bottle of... So, there's plenty of good professional lines of vitamins around, like Pure Encapsulations or Douglas Labs or something like that. And they are great companies for vitamin B12 or niacin or phosphatidylcholine or phosphatidylserine, and they have outstanding quality control. They don't have an herbalist on staff. So when they sell a product that's, ginseng or quercetin, for example, or nettle for their allergies, right? Because nettles and quercetin seem to be a pretty popular thing for allergies. I'll give you this example. If they don't have, sometimes it matters what freaking type of nettles you got and how it was processed and what time of the year and how, how exactly you mixed it into the capsule or tincture. Who knows about these things? Herbalists. Who doesn't know about these things typically? Doctors or nutritionists or, so the example, there's a great line, and I love their products. What are they called? It doesn't matter. They're a great company, and they came out with this allergy product that happens to work, and it has some NAC and some quercetin and some vitamin C, which is a really nice combination. And the nettles in there, they are organic because they're really good company to make sure they're organic. However, the nettles really are way more effective when they are freeze-dried, fresh nettles. So the stinging nettle has this stuff called formic acid, which dissipates over time. So you have to catch it fresh and then immediately freeze-dry it and put that in the capsule. So when it is processed in the right way, it is an amazing treatment for seasonal allergies. And I've seen many people come off of the Claritin and the whatever, taking this stuff. However, they didn't do that. They just put regular nettle in their product, which, thank God, doesn't kill anyone. It's just kind of a nice nutritive, but it's not doing any great things. It's not doing any harm. But had they had an herbalist on staff, they would have known. So I trust, like Natura. This is a company that I really like because at the helm, this is a turmeric product. At the helm of that company is a master herbalist registered with the American Herbalist Guild. I happen to know him personally for the last almost 10 years, and he's brilliant. And I'm not married to that company, but so to answer your question, I would trust an herbalist for herbs, and even if it's a really good company that may make a fantastic B12 supplement, that doesn't mean they know jack about herbs. So I mean,
Very good
this
point. Go ahead. Go ahead. Do you have anything else?
they're not. It's not going to be an exclusive list, and I also don't want to forget anyone and have that on my shoulder. So people are.
No, certainly, and that's my point. It's just some key things to look out for. It's very hard, and again, a lot of things you don't know where it came from, how it was processed. You hit on some very good points. A lot of questions. I've even heard people they just take spiced turmeric, and while, like you said, it has some benefits, and don't doubt it. I think a lot of the things that are beneficial to just add in, making your own food. It's certainly better if you have a limited amount of money and resources and time to go for the good stuff while you're doing it, and you hit on a lot of that. So that's very helpful.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, even if you choose the crappiest form of turmeric or just the stuff on the Kroger spice rack, A, that's not going to kill you, and B, it's pretty good.
Yep. So just to kind of wrap up, you've already hit on a lot of it with COVID-19. We hear about it all in the news. We're all, just scared. We're trying to do the best that we can. So just tell us a little bit about your experience with COVID-19, some of the things that you're doing with your patients. Again, you said there's no cures and we don't even know about it. It changes every day, the treatment options. We're all just trying. But explain some of the basic things that you may know to work for overall health or maybe for viruses. Some of the plants you've hit on garlic, but
yeah, so for treatment, I'm not going to get into that because it's nuanced and you're not going to find those things anyway, and you need a professional help there. But everyone can take this into their own hands. There's their own overall health, and especially with regard to their immune system. I like to measure stuff because I'm an herbalist, but at heart I'm still a scientist, and they're not mutually exclusive. So there are no amazing tests that guarantee anything, like you said, but there's some pretty good tests that when taken into whole account, just like cholesterol, for example, when you just look at total cholesterol, that doesn't really tell you anything. When you look at HDL and HDL, that tells you a little bit more, but it still doesn't really tell you a whole lot, right? Because of that HDL, it could be the fluff HDL1, or it could be the really good HDL subtype 2. But you're just looking at total HDL. When you're looking at LDL, you're just looking at total LDL. That's not all L is lousy and not all H is healthy. So you then look at subtypes of the small, dense, and dangerous LDL versus the HDL2. That's the stuff that actually cleans up, and then how sticky it is with the LP little a, and then the rates of inflammation, and then endothelial markers, myeloprotein. So that still won't 100% say you won't have a heart attack, but the more information you get, the better your bets are. So I'm recommending, so I'm going to start testing next week, not just for the IgG and IgM antibodies, meaning that the M is, you have it now probably, and G, that you probably have been exposed and are probably over it and may be immune, but that's not good enough. So but if you take into account with IgM, IgG, secretory IgA from the mouth, right, that's an overall, irrespective of COVID, whether you have yet to be exposed, are currently exposed, or will be exposed, in all those scenarios, not yet, are now, or have been, you want your SIGA to be high because that's a pretty good one marker. Again, the more you get, the better. But if you're going to just choose one, and you couldn't afford G or M, I would choose a spit test, which you can do at home. It doesn't endanger you guys from having to collect the test. It's $50. And you can spit in a tube, send it in, and that just tells you, according to an immunologist named Arishta Vojdani, which is a PhD, pretty famous, world-renowned immunologist, highly published, that it's a pretty good marker for immune resilience and competency, which is, after all, what we want, because, with this COVID thing, you can run, but you can't hide. I mean, at some point, you got to come out of your house. So when you do come out of your house, you want your immune system to be rocking and just laughing in the face of, be it a cold or flu or a COVID, which, like I said, COVID-19, what about COVID-20? What about COVID-21? What about COVID-20? SIGA, in theory, is pretty good. If you add to that vitamin D above 70, and if you add to that, according to my conversation this morning with Dr. Russ Jaffe, PhD, MD, worked for the NIH, worked as a clinician, worked in research laboratories, highly pedigreed keynote speaker guy that's friends with the Dalai Lama as well as senators. he said the omega's actually a pretty good marker. So zinc, measuring, getting your zinc level above 100, your D level above 70, your SIGA level nice and high to protect you against be it COVID or the common flu or an ant bite and whatever infection you could have from strep or what, it doesn't matter. But especially decent research on viruses in general with secretory IgA. So that's what I would say is that series of tests, D, zinc, omegas, IgM and IgG with a salivary IgA, and then to be even more, you can't get 100%, but even more certain, wait 3 weeks or so and retest at least the IgM, IgG, IgA, because you could have missed it the first time. So the IgG sometimes take up to 90 days to show up. So to really cover your bases using science and logic, doing those tests twice, wait 3-4 weeks, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, wait, retest at least the antibodies to see where you're at. And is it 100%? No. But is it great? Yeah.
That's really great. I mean, right now we're testing coag labs and seeing how that plays into that systemic inflammation. We're doing some of those ferritin labs to see again inflammation, D-dimers, inflammation. So we see a lot of this inflammation that corona is causing, but we're working in hospitals. I'm talking about what we do in the ICU. In my experience, I'm not going to talk about everybody's experience. But we're just working to get those tests spread out, and again, the IgA and IgG and all these. But I like what you're talking about. Let's shift our focus from what Corona's doing, because Corona's going to change. The virus is going to change. Let's focus on looking at what the body can do, because we're going to keep our body. We have to move around in our body. That's a very good point there.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is, like I said, having these things in the optimal range isn't just going to protect you probably using logic. So I can't say 100%, I'm not making a claim, but using logic, these things protect you against viruses, bacteria, and all kinds of other beasties. So again, the worst thing that can happen, if those numbers aren't looking good, if your vitamin D is low, if the omegas are low, if your zinc is low, if your magnesium's low, if your SIGA is low, and I know how to get those better, the worst thing that can happen is you're less likely to at least get a cold. Could you still theoretically get corona? Yes, but if I was a betting man, I would place my bets on that person not getting it, not having symptoms. Probably being.
Do you have any last words, comments as we kind of wrap this up?
No, if you have any questions, you're welcome to call or email. We're working on our website. Like I said, we just moved into our new space and are still coming up with to put on our website. SierraCollaborativeMed.com. The YouTube channel, Sierra Botanic and Collaborative Medicine. The Facebook page is the same name. I'm happy to help folks as best I can. Hope to start testing those antibodies at least next week. I'm testing all the other things already, and it's a really cool conversation that, like you said, the information's changing every day. This is all pretty exciting. The geeks like me love hearing the latest and greatest that has come out with, what does it mean to have M and G positive, and how long did it take for people to make these things, and what correlation did you see between people that had high D dimers and a previous history of low vitamin D, versus people that had high vitamin D and got infected and didn't have any high D dimer, fibrinogen, or clot risk, or got out of the hospital in 3 days instead of 10, right? So all this data is going to take years to come out and collate, but using just logic and what we've seen go down in the past, which Chinese medicine in China has seen these things go on for literally thousands of years, and they have entire textbooks devoted to pandemics. So that's pretty cool information too, which I'm just not going to get into because that's a whole different terminology and ball of wax, but that there's wisdom there. So just because they weren't measuring vitamin D levels or D-dimer or zinc back 1,000 years ago doesn't mean that they don't have anything great to offer to the conversation today.
That's great. And so it sounds like you're still seeing patients in your clinic.
Yeah, we're still seeing patients, like we said, taking a lot of precautions with surfaces. I got a really awesome high-end air filter that filters out viruses and all, pretty much gases and everything from the air. We're having people everyone's washing everything a lot, and doing a lot of phone consultations as well. And we can, I can't check your pulse over the phone, but I can look at your tongue, or people sending in pictures of their tongues to see what's going on. And then we're facilitating them running labs from afar, and then just doing the phone consult to figure out, hey, your SIGA is low, let's get you on some astragalus, or let's get you on some reishi, or what's going on with your throat, do we need to do some garlic or some echinacea tincture or whatever it is.
I think this will be helpful right now. Everyone is pushed. All we're doing is self-quarantining for people who are sick. We're all quarantining to prevent the surge. We don't know when it is. We all can speculate and correlate. It could happen again. We just don't know. There's a lot of that unknown. So certainly just using an herbalist for someone who may not be sick but wants to prevent from getting sick, or just finding, like I said, that opportunity for growth. They might have a fitness goal they want to achieve, a wellness goal, an emotional goal. They may be a little stressed right now. So just using all the resources in our community that we may not know about, we may be cut off a little bit, but we still have you, Oscar, by phone, coming in a slightly different physical exam or whatnot, but we can still get it done. And I'm so glad that you were able to chat with us today. You've offered a lot of information, so that was great.
My pleasure.
I'll sign off. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care, y'all.